You were told a story since birth that if you worked hard, followed the rules, kept your head down, and stayed in school, you'd earn a good job. That the job would bring income, and the income would bring status, and one day you'd arrive at peace, at security, at success. They called it the American dream, a belief that you could own your future. That ownership was freedom. That debt was normal. That success required suffering, and if you weren't happy, you hadn't worked hard enough. But dreams are fragile, and this one was never really yours. Because beneath the white picket fences, under the promise of prosperity, there was something else. A contract, signed not with ink, but with belief. But what if this dream wasn't just a promise? What if it was a tool? What if it was a prison? What if the American dream wasn't broken, but working exactly as intended? The invention of a dream, coined in 1931 by historian James Truslow Adams during the throes of the Great Depression. He wrote, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. The term American dream is a relatively recent one. The American dream is that dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone. Adams imagined a nation of fairness and dignity, not luxury or excess, but language is plastic, easily bent by culture and commerce. By the 1950s, the American dream had been hijacked. It transformed from a vision of collective opportunity into a narrative of individual possession. The promise of dignity became the pursuit of things. Own your home. Television glamorized the ideal family life. 2 kids, a Buick, a kitchen filled with shiny appliances. They paid over time, decades. Own your car, own your future. But to own is to borrow, because most people don't own anything. They owe everything. The U.S. government responded with the GI Bill, which subsidized mortgages, education, and home construction. It was designed, and that shift from dignity to debt wasn't an accident. Post-war America, from freedom to financing. After World War II, millions of returning veterans needed homes, jobs, and stability. Banks flooded the economy with easy credit. Suburbs exploded. Developers built rows of identical homes. But here's the catch. No one paid up front. This is when the American dream quietly merged with debt culture. In a consumer economy, people need to spend to keep growth alive. But when wages stagnate, as they did throughout the late 20th century, people can't spend unless they borrow. Debt became the bridge between reality and expectation. And the dream became a script. Take out loans for college. Get a job to pay off the loans, get a mortgage, take on car payments. Raise a family that repeats the cycle. Debt became invisible, not as a burden, but as a rite of passage. This was no longer a dream. It was a contractual lifestyle. The psychology of debt. Now, let's go deeper. Beneath the banks and the budgets lies something far more powerful. Desire. Desire is not rational. It's not even conscious. It's primal. And nobody understood desire better than Sigmund Freud. Freud believed we are ruled by unconscious forces, deep cravings for security, approval, pleasure. These desires can't be eliminated, but they can be redirected, controlled, commercialized. Enter Edward Bernays, Freud's nephew, known as the father of modern public relations. He took Freud's theories and applied them to capitalism. Bernays knew that people don't buy products. They buy identities. They buy stories. They buy relief from fear, loneliness, and insignificance. Want to feel important? Buy a luxury car. Want to feel desired? Buy makeup. Want to feel in control? Buy a home, even if it comes with 30 years of payments. Consumerism became therapy, and that therapy was always available, on credit. When you link self-worth to spending, debt becomes emotional. It's not just a financial burden. It's a psychological leash. And the worst part, you're the one tightening it while thanking the system for the rope. Marx and the fetish of the commodity. Let's switch philosophers. Karl Marx never lived in post-war America, but his insights pierced through time. Marx argued that in a capitalist system, relationships become transactional. Even people are treated as products. valued only by their utility or output. He called it commodity fetishism, the illusion that goods have intrinsic value beyond their function. A house isn't just shelter, it's status. A car isn't just transportation, it's identity. The American dream encouraged commodity worship. A college degree isn't about learning, it's a branded signal. A house isn't a home, it's equity, resale, and asset. A job isn't a calling, it's a paycheck to feed your debt. Marx warned that this would alienate us from each other, from our labor, and he was right. Because the modern worker doesn't dream of freedom. They dream of making their next payment. The silent power of debt. Debt is a quiet dictator. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and its most effective form of control, voluntary servitude. No one is forcing you to go into debt. No one is putting a gun to your head. That's what makes it brilliant. You borrow willingly, you thank the bank, you feel grateful for the chance to prove yourself worthy. Debt rewires your mind. It makes you fear losing your job. It makes you say yes to things you hate. It makes you stay in toxic places just to stay afloat, and all the while you're called free. A system that doesn't need force. George Orwell imagined a future of surveillance and control. But Aldous Huxley predicted something far more dangerous. A world where control is achieved not through pain, but pleasure. A society so pacified by comfort that it no longer resists. That's what debt does. It gives you just enough to feel progress, but never enough to feel peace. You work, you earn, you consume. And when you're stressed, you medicate with more consumption. Debt creates dependency, not just financially, but emotionally. It teaches you that security comes from outside yourself, from a system, from approval, from institutions. The more you owe, the more obedient you become. Who wins? Let's follow the money. The bank profits from interest. The employer benefits from your dependency. The government collects taxes. The market thrives on your endless consumption. You're not just a worker, you're a customer, a data point, a debt machine. Your attention, your stress, your paycheck, your hopes, they're all monetized. And the longer you believe in the dream, the more deeply you stay asleep. The cost of a dream. The dream isn't free. It costs decades of your life. It costs emotional peace. It costs relationships and mental health and time with your children. You are told this is normal, that adulthood is supposed to feel this way, that suffering means you're doing it right. But ask yourself, what kind of dream needs you to suffer in silence to seed? The moment of realization. At some point, if you're lucky, the illusion cracks. You lose the job. You miss the payment. You realize that the home you bought doesn't feel like yours. You see that success hasn't made you feel safe, only more anxious. And in that moment, a terrifying truth arises. You did everything right. And you're still not free? That's not your failure. That's the system's success. The turning point. But now that you see it, you can begin to choose. You don't have to escape overnight. But you can start asking dangerous questions. Who profits from my belief in this dream? What would enough look like if it wasn't measured in dollars? What kind of life would I live if I wasn't chasing approval? Because once you ask those questions, the dream starts to dissolve. And what's left isn't emptiness. It's possibility. They sold you a dream, not to liberate you, but to tame you. They wrapped your cage in white picket fences and told you it was freedom, but now you see the bars. And now you can begin to bend them. Segment 2, Desire Debt. How capitalism rewires your wants. What if your desires aren't yours? What if every craving you've ever chased, every goal you've pursued, every product you've longed for wasn't born inside you, but placed there? What if the financial decisions you call freedom are actually the end result of a well-designed psychological script? Welcome to the second layer of the trap, not the debt itself, but the wants that made you welcome it. This isn't about money anymore. It's about manipulated desire, how it's shaped, targeted, and sold back to you. The illusion of autonomy. Modern capitalism doesn't need to coerce you to spend. It simply convinces you that you want to. Every ad you scroll past, every influencer you follow, every product you didn't know you needed until 5 seconds ago, It's all feeding your identity illusion, the idea that you're in control of what you want, when in fact, your wants were engineered. And this manipulation doesn't just affect what you buy. It shapes your values. You don't just want the car. You want what the car says about you. You don't just want the brand. You want to be seen with it. Desire becomes performance, and performance becomes debt. Freud, desire as disorder. To understand this machinery, we start with Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Freud didn't believe that humans are rational. He believed we are ruled by unconscious urges, hidden forces of sex, fear, validation, dominance, and escape. These urges aren't wrong or shameful, but they are uncontrollable, so society must channel them. And capitalism, unlike religion or monarchy, doesn't repress desire. It monetizes it. Capitalism doesn't tell you not to sin. It sells you the sin. In fact, the entire advertising industry is built on Freud's model of the psyche. Simulate the ID. Flatter the ego and bypass the superego, and it works. We don't buy based on logic. We buy to soothe, to signal, to seduce. Edward Bernays, How Desire Became Industrialized. Now enter Ed Bernays. Freud's nephew and the inventor of modern PR, Bernays took his uncle's theories and weaponized them for business. In the 1920s, he didn't just sell products, he sold desire. He convinced women to smoke by calling cigarettes torches of freedom. He doubled bacon sales by calling it the all-American breakfast. He popularized ivory soap by promoting it to schools and doctors. Bernays didn't change reality, he changed perception. This was the birth of manufactured desire. He realized that if you can control what people want, you never have to force them to act. They'll do it themselves, and they'll pay you for it. The shift from need to want. Before the Industrial Revolution, people bought what they needed. But mass production created a problem: surplus. Factories could produce more than people could use. So the economy had to create a new kind of consumer, not one driven by necessity, but by desire. And that meant teaching people that new is better. More is better. Owning is being. And to be happy, you must buy. This marked the beginning of planned obsolescence, seasonal fashion, branding, and status signaling. Desire was no longer spontaneous. It was scheduled. And with the rise of mass media, these ideas could now be implanted at scale. Across countries, across classes, across every waking moment. Lacan, the never-ending want. Freud mapped the unconscious. But it was Jacques Lacan who added something darker. Lacan argued that desire is never fulfilled. Why? Because we don't desire objects. We desire lack itself. As soon as we get the thing, the desire fades, and a new one takes its place. Capitalism thrives on this perpetual dissatisfaction. It sells you an image of a better life. Then, once you buy in, it replaces it with another. You got the phone, I get the case. You bought the house. Now renovate it, you finished the degree. Now get the certification. Desire is always deferred. Happiness is always just one purchase away. This keeps you consuming, which keeps you borrowing, which keeps you in debt. Credit, desire's enabler, but desire isn't enough. To really trap you, the system must give you access. Enter consumer credit, credit cards, buy dash now, dash pay dash later schemes, payday loans, student debt, auto financing, mortgage bundling. The list is endless. Credit turns desire into reality instantly. No waiting, no saving, no reflection. It removes the pain from the purchase by pushing it into the future. This makes you spend more faster and with less guilt. And the best part for the system is that you'll keep paying long after the pleasure is gone. Credit is not just a tool. It's a cultural addiction. The digital age, algorithmic desire. Now take all of this. Freudian urges, Bernaysian PR, Lacanian lack, credit-based consumption, and plug it into TikTok or Instagram or Amazon. We now live in a world where algorithms study your unconscious faster than you can understand it. They know your stress levels, your dopamine triggers, the time of day you're weakest, the products that make you hesitate, and how long it takes to click. They tailor your feed to stimulate micro desires, tiny cravings, designed to bypass logic and hit your reward centers. Swipe, like cart, buy. Each micro desire strengthens the behavioral loop. Each loop increases your dependency. And every piece of data, every scroll, tap, hesitation becomes fuel for a machine that doesn't just respond to your desires, it creates them. From desire to debt, the emotional tether. At this point, the cycle is complete. Desire is implanted. Purchase is enabled. Get is normalized. Identity is tethered. And the system keeps growing. You no longer desire things. You desire the emotions you associate with them. Security, power, beauty, belonging. And those emotions are leased, not owned. You don't own the car. You don't own the clothes. You don't even own the phone you're watching this on. You rent your identity. And your monthly payments are emotional, the higher the hustle. Some call this ambition. Others call it survival. But the end result is the same: exhaustion. You keep chasing more because the system taught you that more is how you prove you're enough. This is why personal finance advice often falls flat. It tells you to budget, save, cut back, but it doesn't address the core issue. You're spending to fill a psychological void, a void the system helped create. A void it profits from? This isn't bad behavior. It's conditioned behavior. And until you confront the source of your desires, you will remain on the wheel, running, earning, buying, owing. Can desire be freed? Here's the good news. Not all desire is corrupted. There is authentic desire, the kind that isn't shaped by ads, followers, or social metrics. It's the desire to learn, to connect, to create, to grow. But to access it, you must go through withdrawal from the stimulation, from the approval, from the noise. You must face the silence, the one you've been running from, and ask, what do I really want when no one is watching? That's where freedom starts, not with a bank account, but with awareness, closing thoughts. You were told that your desires define you, but no one told you that your desires were designed, that your debt is not a failure of discipline. It's the byproduct of a system built to seduce you. And that every time you mistake consumption for freedom, you trade a piece of your autonomy for an illusion. But now you see the machine. And when you see it, you can start choosing which desires to keep and which to let go. Segment 3. Debt as governance. How owing keeps you obedient. The invisible leash. Debt is not just about money. It's about obedience. You owe, so you stay quiet. You work. You comply. You don't rebel. In the old world, rulers used chains and force. In the modern world, they use monthly payments. You were promised freedom, but they gave you a credit score instead. And the scariest part? You signed the contract willingly. The history of debt as control. Debt has always been a tool of control. In ancient Mesopotamia, debt could land you in slavery. In the Roman Empire, a citizen who couldn't pay could be legally dismembered and sold off in parts. In medieval Europe, debt was a moral sin, and lenders, even when legal, were viewed as necessary evils. But something changed with capitalism. Debt lost its stigma. It became a virtue, a sign of participation in the economy. To be in debt meant you were building credit. You were being responsible. You were playing the game. But the rules of the game are not yours. They are written by banks, enforced by employers, and glorified by culture. Michel Foucault, elf governing slaves. French philosopher Michel Foucault gave us a powerful lens to understand modern control. In medieval societies, power was external, the king, the priest, the army. But in modern capitalist societies, power becomes internalized. You police yourself. You wake up to an alarm you didn't set freely. You go to a job you wouldn't choose without debt. You smile, comply, agree because your survival depends on it. This is biopower, a form of control that doesn't punish you. It conditions you. And the most effective conditioning tool of the modern era is debt. Debt creates obedience. When you owe, you can't walk away. From your job, from your mortgage, from your government, you become dependent. You might hate the system, but you rely on it. This is not a bug in the system. It is the design. Student debt keeps you quiet at work. Medical debt keeps you tied to employment. Credit card debt keeps you addicted to the wage cycle. You become afraid to question, because to question is to risk everything, and fear is the best compliance tool ever invented. Debt creates obedience. When you owe, you can't walk away. From your job, from your mortgage, from your government, you become dependent. You might hate the system, but you rely on it. This is not a bug in the system. It is the design. Student debt keeps you quiet at work. Medical debt keeps you tied to employment. Credit card debt keeps you addicted to wage cycle. You become afraid to question, because to question is to risk everything. And fear is the best compliance tool ever invented. Political debt, buying your silence. Governments know this. They don't just allow debt, they encourage it. Tax codes reward mortgage holders. Federal funding flows into student loans, not affordable education. Bailouts go to banks, not to people. Why? Because a population in debt is a controlled population. They'll work harder, stay quieter, vote safe, avoid risk. Debt makes you easier to govern, not by laws, but by necessity. This is not politics. It's psychological warfare. And it works. How debt rewires your brain. That doesn't just affect your choices. It changes your chemistry. It increases cortisol. It decreases serotonin. It narrows your prefrontal cortex activity, making you worse at long-term thinking. This means the more debt you're in, the harder it becomes to escape it. Debt turns survival into a full-time job. And when you're surviving, you're not questioning. You're not meditating, not reading, not organizing, not rebelling. You are stuck in a mental fog, optimized for obedience, not clarity. Moral debt, the internal prison. But the trap doesn't stop at the wallet. It enters your morality. Capitalist societies love to moralize debt. If you owe, it's your fault. You were irresponsible. You need to work harder. You're lazy if you want forgiveness. This framing turns debt into shame, and shame is paralyzing. It makes you feel guilty for being trapped in a trap you never built. This guilt isolates you. It keeps you from organizing, protesting, asking for change. And that's exactly what the system wants. A population that blames itself instead of its oppressor. The myth of good debt. You've heard the phrase, there's good debt and bad debt. Mortgage equals good, student loan equals good, credit card equals bad. But this is a trick. All debt is profitable to someone. Good debt just means the bank likes your odds. It doesn't mean freedom. It means you've been approved for a longer leash. The system rewards you for playing along. You get points, better rates, more perks. But the truth remains, you don't own your time. You don't own your labor. You don't own your future. Because ownership requires freedom from obligation, and you're still obligated. Debt isn't broken. It's perfect. People say the system is broken. But look around. The average American household has $100,000 plus in debt. 45 million people owe student loans. Millions leave paycheck to paycheck. Wages haven't kept up with inflation. CEOs earn 350x more than the average worker. This isn't failure. This is success. Debt is not a side effect. It's the engine. A system built on growth must create constant consumption. To fuel that consumption, people must be perpetually in need. And debt ensures they always are. Work, the modern debt prison. Think of your job. Would you go if you didn't have to? Would you trade 8 to 10 hours of your life every day? If you weren't in debt, most people wouldn't. That's why the system makes opting out impossible. It hands you dreams, then attaches debt to every one of them. Want a degree? Loan. Want a house? Mortgage. Want a car? Finance it. Want a future? Get to work. And once you're in the cycle, leaving feels like suicide. This isn't accidental. Work is no longer a path to freedom. It's the maintenance plan for your bondage. Escape is not easy, but it's possible. To escape this trap, you must first see it. Understand that the freedom you were sold is conditional. That every dollar you owe is a psychological collar. And that freedom doesn't mean getting rich. It means regaining autonomy over your decisions. That starts by questioning your purchases, redefining what success looks like, seeking value beyond status, disengaging from shame, rebuilding community, not competition, debt as governance. The final truth. Here's the brutal truth. The best kind of control is the one that feels like choice. Debt gives you that illusion. You signed the papers. You clicked accept. You thought you were in control. But every system, school, media, banks, even your job, nudged you into that corner. Not because you failed, but because they planned it that way. And now you're here, looking around, wondering, how did I end up like this? The answer is simple. You trusted a system that profits from your obedience. But the moment you see the leash, you can choose to loosen it. And that choice is where real power begins. Segment 4. Escape the treadmill. Reclaiming financial and mental freedom. The treadmill was never broken. It was perfectly engineered. You were told if you work hard, you'll make it. You were told if you save diligently, invest wisely, and stay disciplined, you'll be free. But what if the game was rigged from the start? What if freedom was never the end goal, but a marketing illusion, dangled just far enough in front of you to keep you moving, spending, borrowing, obeying? You're not lazy. You're not failing. You are running on a treadmill that wasn't built for escape. It was built to wear you down. In this segment, we'll explore how to escape it, not just financially, but mentally, spiritually, and philosophically, because the real prison isn't debt, it's distraction. And the real freedom, it's not wealth, it's autonomy. Part 1, the psychology of economic conditioning. Let's start with your mind. Why do you keep chasing more productivity, more income, more growth, even when it's draining your soul? The answer lies in something psychologists call learned helplessness. It's a state where you've been conditioned, slowly, subtly, to believe that no matter what you do, nothing will change. So you keep doing what you're told. Now tie this to the modern economic machine. You're told, buy a house or you're irresponsible. Get a degree or you'll be a failure. Invest in stocks or you'll fall behind. These aren't neutral decisions. They are loaded with emotional and cultural fear triggers. The result? You make major life choices not out of intention, but out of anxiety. Not from vision, but from avoidance. Capitalism doesn't just extract labor. It colonizes your self-worth. And until you become aware of that, you'll keep chasing goals that aren't yours. Part 2, redefining freedom from financial to philosophical. Let's get something straight. Freedom is not the absence of work. It's the presence of choice. If you wake up every day to do something meaningful on your terms and you can walk away at any time, that's real wealth. But that version of freedom isn't built on earning more. It's built on needing less. This is where ancient philosophy becomes revolutionary. Epicurus taught that true happiness requires only 3 things: friends, freedom from pain, freedom from fear. He rejected luxury. He lived simply. He found joy in gardens, conversations, and self-mastery. And here's the truth. The less you need, the harder you are to control. Because if you need nothing from the system, you can't be bought, bribed, or scared into submission. That's the mindset that breaks the treadmill. Part 3, the 4 levels of escape. We now get practical. Let's break the escape into 4 actionable tiers, like philosophical rungs of a ladder. Level 1, financial escape. You don't need millions. You need margin. Cut fixed expenses ruthlessly. Rent, subscriptions, services you barely use. Build a fuck you fund, 6 to 12 months of bare minimum expenses stored safely. Pay down high interest debt. It's not just a number, it's psychological weight. Stop lifestyle creep. If your income rises, your expenses shouldn't. When you reduce dependency, every dollar you don't spend is a vote for freedom. This isn't minimalism for aesthetics. It's minimalism as resistance. Level 2, time escape. If your hours are owned, your soul is rented. Track how many hours a week you spend doing things you hate. Now calculate what that's costing your life. Reclaim hours through subtraction, remove, delegate, automate, say no, politely, aggressively, often. Your time is your most precious non-renewable asset. Treat it as such. Level 3, attention escape. What controls your focus controls your future. Social media is not free. It costs presence. Notifications are micro tasers for your brain. Turn them off, clean your feeds, follow ideas, not influencers. Practice deep boredom. Sit with nothing. Let your thoughts breathe. Why? Because capitalism hates silence. In silence, you become dangerous. You start thinking for yourself. Level 4, identity escape. This is the deepest layer. Because if the system can define who you are, it doesn't need to control you. You'll control yourself. So ask, who would I be without my job title, without my income, without my possessions? If you strip it all away, what remains? That's where your freedom begins. Part 4, replacing consumption with creation. Once you exit the loop, even partially, avoid the peers. You're no longer numbing yourself with dopamine hits. You're no longer reacting to manufactured urgency. So now what? You create. Start small. Write, build, teach, garden, mentor, organize. Share your ideas. When you create, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a consumer, become a participant. You stop saying, what should I buy next? And start asking, what should I build? And here's the secret. Creation rewires the brain for fulfillment, not craving. You start needing less and giving more. And that is radical. Part 5, the social resistance to your escape. A hard truth. The more you unplug, the more resistance you'll face. Not from banks, not from brands, but from people you love. Your shift will mirror what they're afraid to confront in themselves. They'll say, that's not realistic. You're being extreme. Don't you miss the old you? Because when you stop running, it highlights that others are still sprinting and they hate the reflection. You must stand firm, not with arrogance, but with quiet conviction. You are not escaping society. You are escaping dependency. You are walking toward a life built on approval. Part 6, the new treadmill, conscious building. Freedom isn't the end. It's the beginning. Once you step off the treadmill, you don't sit still. You start building your own path. Ask, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? What does wealth mean to me beyond money? Who am I when I'm not performing? Maybe you start a business. Maybe you homeschool your kids. Maybe you grow food, write books, teach philosophy, or just sit in stillness more often. Whatever it is, let it be yours. Not a reaction to capitalism. Not a rebellion against your past, but a return to your core values. Because in the end, the truest form of rebellion is to live deliberately. Closing reflection, the door was never locked. Here's the twist. The treadmill didn't trap you. You were conditioned to keep running by fear, by comparison, by scarcity. But the door was never locked. You were just never taught how to stop. Now you are. And now you get to choose. So take a breath. Step off. And ask the question capitalism never wants you to hear. What kind of life would I build if I wasn't trying to survive? Whatever your answer is, that's where the real journey begins. If this message resonated with you, if it made you pause, reflect, or breathe differently, then join us. Like this video to signal the algorithm that more minds need to hear this. Comment below. What's the first step you're taking to escape the treadmill? Subscribe for more content that questions, challenges, and liberates. This isn't a typical channel. This is a rebellion in thought. And you're not alone anymore.